What's up, folks? It's Two Bricks, and the moment is finally here where I can talk about the official $1,000 Death Star set, the first ever $1,000 LEGO set. Of course, it's been making a bunch of headlines in the LEGO community, so if you're at all interested in LEGO Star Wars, which I assume that you are because you're watching this video, you've probably heard a bunch about this already. So there's not that much to say about it left, but I have some very specific critiques and also defenses of the set that I'm interested in talking about with you all today. So hopefully I have a few new things left to say, and you guys are interested to hear that. So definitely check out the chapters down below if there are specific things that you are interested in hearing me talk about, because this is going to be a long video. This is a massive, massive set. Obviously, it's the biggest set ever produced by LEGO, or at least the most expensive. So let's get right on in and talk about it. So first of all, of course, the most important thing is leave a like on this video, but checking out the packaging here, you can see it's really a pretty standard mix of stills from the movies and things that you would expect toy companies to do, like render their own images of the thing to show it in the exact way that they want to show it. So I really don't have any major complaints about the packaging. The way that all of the different box art comes together to form a single image for the three main boxes is perfectly fine to me, and I think it all looks reasonably good, and the box itself is huge and weighs so much when you first get it, so it's kind of crazy, just the heft of it. So I think that's probably the most striking thing about it, to be honest. One issue that I did notice with the packaging is that the ordering of the bags felt a little bit odd, in the sense that you'll reach the end of an instruction manual that will say get the next bag, but the next bag isn't in the box that you're currently working on, and it's in fact in the next box. And so the first time that happened, I thought I was missing a bag and I was about to call customer service, and then I opened up the next box to check and it was in there, and then that carried over to the third box. So it's just a weird, confusing thing, and I think in the instruction manuals, if they had planned to distribute the bags in that way, they should have put a little note to say open box 3 to find this bag in that box, because yeah, it was weird, and I'm just curious as to what happened to shift those around, because that clearly wasn't the intention originally. And then a little Easter egg, of course, Palpatine comes in bag 66, so that's fun. And then, of course, to actually build this set, you need all of these instruction manuals, of which there are a great many, and each of them has a lot of detailed information at the front of it that you can read through, all about the Death Star, about the model itself, about the characters that you're building. So lots and lots of good stuff there, and that's all fairly standard for UCS sets. And I think that, again, they did a really good job with that overall. There's actually some interesting little tidbits in here, so I was happy to see that. And in previous years, I have actually had quality issues with the instruction manuals where pages were printed in really dark colors where I couldn't actually identify the color that I'm supposed to be building of the LEGO bricks, but I didn't have any of those issues this time around. The quality on the instruction manuals was great. And then, of course, one of the big draws of a set like this is that you get a whole bunch of minifigures to populate the scenes and the little dioramas and things that are in the set itself. And here we have 38 official minifigures and then a couple of side-built droids. And I guess also you could count the Dianoga from the trash compactor as a 41st character if you wanted to. Of course, that's just literally 3 pieces, and it's not even a whole character, so I wouldn't count it, but you know, just in case you're looking to be extra purist about it. But let's dive in and take a look at these in groups to get them out of the way fairly quickly, because they've been talked about a lot already. So beginning with 2 of the most desirable figures here, we have Krennic and Galen Erso, of course, and they give you this, you know, UCS plaque here, and then the little stand to place them on. And then they have a little computer console here, including the removable 1x2 tile that has the sort of data tapes on it that has the Death Star plans on it. So that's very nice, and you can give that to Galen to hold, although, you know, I would be worried about the print eventually getting damaged on this very valuable part, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it on the computer console there. I'm glad that they included a spot for it. Krennic, of course, is looking excellent with his cape game on point, as you'd expect. And then if we take him off and we give a little look around the back, he has his more angry face, his sort of, you know, when he loses control and he says fire and he says kill all of the scientists kind of face. And he's got the standard Imperial uniform printed very nicely there for the ISB kind of officers, what we'd expect to see. And he looks great. Again, cape game on point. Galen Erso, a very valuable figure here, of course, to get. First time we've ever gotten him in LEGO in any form. The sort of Imperial scientist uniform there looks absolutely great. The logo on the arm is a nice touch. And he has a sort of more concerned face and then a slightly more passive face. I guess that's more of the face that he presents to his Imperial colleagues day to day to hide his true feelings of disgust. So then we have the torture droid right here. And of course, if you're ever wondering if you're on the wrong side of history, if you have such a thing as a torture droid, you're probably on the wrong side. So here he has the syringe and the little antenna thingy off the side here, and then this can actually be removed. and placed into a scene later on, which we'll take a look at in the actual set. But then otherwise it just has a little stand there for it to be on, which is nice. And then a very standard build for a mouse droid here. I do like the fact that it has an anti-stud on top, because I like to pose this upside down in one of the scenes as if the other droids have been bullying it and kicked it over. So the anti-stud allows me to do that, and I think that's fun. But yeah, overall, these two, very collectible, highly desirable. Glad we got them. So next up here we have the main kind of squad of human heroes. We have Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, Obi-Wan, and also Obi-Wan's toupee. So that's fun. Farm Boy Luke here looks absolutely great to me. I really like what they did with his robes, and the printing on that all feels very nice. The white feels opaque enough so it doesn't feel he's wearing weird pale shorts. And then the back printing here, I believe all of the torso printing is new, and all of the pouches and stuff look great. He gets a alternate expression to look more stern, and then he has his regular happy-go-lucky Luke face. So yeah, really good on that. And then same again, but with a Stormtrooper outfit. Of course, we would expect to see that with the Death Star, so no complaints there. I think the Stormtrooper outfit looks great. And then since we are a little bit low on Stormtroopers, you can actually take the Hot Top Stormtrooper's helmet, put that on there, and you have yourself one extra Stormtrooper. Or of course, if you just want Luke to be in disguise and have the big reveal that he is in fact here to rescue Princess Leia, you can do that as well. So there's that. And then we have Return of the Jedi Luke, and he looks suitably good in his outfit here for fighting the Emperor. Very dark, very ominous, and he's got the new hair that we got in the diorama piece, so that's nice to get again. We've gotten it a few times since as well, but yeah, he's got his, again, optimistic face. Same deal as the other ones, and then the slightly more serious face there, and the black hand is represented correctly, so that's all good. And then we have our first Han Solo, so Han Duo. Again, we've got the Stormtrooper look here, same body, of course, as Luke, as you'd expect, and then the same head as the other Han. Again, what you'd expect to see, pretty good. And I like the, that they've switched to the updated hair and they've never gone back. Of course, you really can't go back once you see how good this hair looks. So yeah, same exact range of expression there. And a really nice rendition of Han's outfit from the movie with all of the pouches and things looking suitably good. It would have been nice to get the print down the pants there, although I think maybe that's only in Empire. I actually kind of forget if he has the stripy pants in in A New Hope, so I'll have to rewatch that. But then yeah, Leia with no skirt piece, but that's fine. I don't really like the skirt that much anyway. I think it's kind of limiting for plate. Nice silver belt on Leia there, and then the hood that goes down really nice and far, which is pretty accurate, I think, to what we see of her costume in the movie. So I really like that. She has her annoyed face for resisting the Empire, and her smirky face, which is great. Chewie is Chewie. This is the first kind of major miss, I think, just in the fact that they gave him the bowcaster, but not binders, so that you cannot do the Wookiee prisoner gag up in the prison block. So that's annoying, but he does have the little pole here, so you can try to brace the walls when they're closing in. But other than that, nothing new to see here. And then we have a nice Obi-Wan rendition as well. Got the nice kind of grubby robes there from all of his time living as a hermit. And then, of course, we have the included hood, the two different expressions, and then his toupee. Like I said, this kind of could be a little in reference to the fact that Alec Guinness was wearing a very obvious toupee that changed positions scene to scene in A New Hope. And then here we have literally, Lego does refer to these as wigs internally, so it's kind of funny that that's the case here as well. But yeah, a nice looking Obi-Wan. So I have no major issues with any of these figures, I think, other than the fact that they should have included the handcuffs there. I think I'm happy with this lineup. And then next up we have the droids. So these guys can Spider-Man meme at each other. We have, of course, the Imperial droids on this side, and then Lego calls out that there's eye printing on this for the first time, which looks really great. And then the clear dome is another standout element here. But other than the fact that R2 gets the nice back printing, which has now become standard practice for Lego to include, this guy does not get the back printing, unfortunately. And then C-3PO is standard, other than the fact that we would like to see that dual molded leg. That really feels important. He's got the silver print on there to indicate that he has the missing or the replaced silver limb, but no dual molding for that. And you can get that in a keychain, you can get that in cheaper sets, and it just seems kind of silly to not include it here. So yeah, that's another major miss on the figures that people have been talking a lot about. But of course, functionally it's a 3PO that you can throw into any scene and you know who it is. It's not like you can't tell It's not like he has a red arm or something, so you can't tell who he is. But you know, it just feels like, again, it's one of those things. Like, I get that there's logistical things and whatever that LEGO considers, but come on, throw the dual molded leg in there. It's not that big a deal. Let's go. And representing the upper echelons of the Empire here, of course, the head honcho himself, Palpatine. It's a nice looking rendition of Palpatine. The way that the robes continue down through the legs feels good. And then for his face here, we get the, you know, the very mean expression and then the very placid one. So again, he can be either menacing or over the top and silly, and of course he does get his lightning bolts here. I do kind of prefer the classic lightning bolt with handle pieces that LEGO did use in the original Death Star, not just because of nostalgia, but because it's just less awkward to have a little sort of handle piece that then attaches to the lightning. I like that one could come straight out of his hand, and it just felt a little bit more impactful than this, which feels a bit funny to me. You know, pretty standard Vader here, but he does have the arm printing, so that's nice. And then the same head that we've come to expect with Vader, with the more sullen expression there. This is a bit more of a serious Vader instead of the redeemed one with the smirk. And then, yeah, nice printing on all of his different elements there. And of course he has his nice spongy cape as well, so that makes it easy to play with. Grand Moff Tarkin here looking suitably grand, with all of the printing for all of his Imperial code cylinders and his regalia. He's got so many different you know, little indications for his rank there, because he's up there. And then his expression goes from annoyed sarcastic to genuinely annoyed, so that's good. I think that's a good range there. Next up we have Yularen, and he's got the confusing rank. His rank changes constantly. This character's been around since the Clone Wars, through Andor, and then through the original trilogy. So anyways, here's Yularen, and again, he looks great. The face print is a really good match to the original actor, and then he looks a little bit more shocked here. Maybe the Death Star's about to explode, and so he can look a little bit taken aback there, which is good. And then we have Tag and Moti, or Moti and Tag. I cannot remember which one is which. They're just, you know, they're just annoying background Imperial officers that are there to antagonize Vader in that scene. And of course, I'm going to lose my Star Wars credentials for not remembering which one is which, but I love the choice of the hairpiece here. And again, the expressions are suitably like smug and, oh no, it's all gone wrong, which again, you want to see, because all of these Imperials get blown to bits when the Death Star goes up, so that's great. Again, awesome, perfect choice of hairpiece for this guy right here, and then the expression range there is also suitably, I mean, it works, right? It's like the sarcastic, and then, oh, I've made a big error in judgment here, and then these two officers really could have used the dual molding for their legs. That's one of the things that people have been saying. Really should have been included, because we have the dual molded gray and black for the boots that exists for other characters in other sets, so why not include them here? And again, I know that there's some logistical reason for LEGO for not doing so, but it really feels like for $1,000 there's no excuse that the public would accept, and so they should have found a way. Then we have the Imperial Advisor here, or like Palpatine's right-hand man, so basically Jafar in the Star Wars universe. He's got his really cool new headpiece here that was designed just for this set, so that's great. And then as far as expression goes, he's got the more serious, the rebels are no threat kind of face, and then the haha, we're on the cusp of victory, except oh no, we're about to get blown up. And then the robes again look really nice. It would have been nice to continue a little bit of that printing down into the leg piece, but I'm not mad about it. And again, the indication for his hood there looks really good. So it's nice to get a brand new character that we've never gotten, and also a new element for him. And we have two identical of the Royal Guards here with the double-sided cape with the red and then the dark red, so that looks awesome. And I believe this is also new printing for the cloth folds on the torso here, which I don't think is especially necessary, and just the black heads like we're used to with these. It's kind of funny that they haven't switched to any kind of new method for that yet, like a dual molded, you know, headpiece here with the black included, so they can put a human face underneath it, not just black. That feels very old school, but again, I don't really think it needs it, because we've never seen one of these guys demask anyway, and it's not really necessary for the budget, so I totally understand. I don't mind that one bit. And here are the remaining figures. So we have all of our sort of Imperial ground crew, gunners, Death Star officers, and then regular stormtroopers here, and of course I'm including Hot Top Trooper amongst the regulars. So these two look really nice. The Imperial Shuttle pilot here looks really great, and he's got the obviously single-sided face, because he doesn't have any hair behind his cap, because they've yet to make one of these that has hair attached to it, unlike for the lady version there. But yeah, uniform looks good. Printing down on the pants there for the pouches and everything looks fine to me. This higher ranking Imperial officer, I'm not sure exactly what this rank is, but they're using the Dedramiro cap and hair piece there with the brown coloration this time and the black for the cap, which looks really nice. And again, that's just very useful to have a lot of different kinds of Imperial officers around. And then again, no double-sided face for this one. And then the microphone guy here. So I've seen this head print before, I believe. And then again, single-sided, got the cap, and with the little insignia on it, looks great as we'd expect. And the uniform also looks really good with all of the pouches and things, and the little metallic prints for the belt. Looks nice. And then same body on this one, except we have the Dedramiro cap piece there, again in black with the blonde hair, and that looks great. It's nice that they included two different variants of this in the set. Then we have our first Imperial gunner, and again with the little fine bits of print on the helmet there, and the Imperial logo looking very crisp on the front of the helmet. That looks great. And then he has a single-sided face under here, and the sort of mid-dark skin tone. And again, printing on the uniform all looks great. I didn't get any bum figures in this lineup, so I'm very happy about that. And then our second Death Star gunner has the female face with the slightly lighter mid-tone of skin. And then again, looks really nice. Really good crisp printing on that. Then we have our first of two Death Star troopers, and these are useful heads because you can swap them for Rebel troops, and you can put the big white ice cream scoop hats on them, and then they work with these chin straps, so very nice on that. And he has the sort of lighter olive skin that we've seen for typically like Hispanic characters like Pedro Pascal. I think debuted this character with the Mandalorian, or debuted this skin tone, I believe. Again, really nice look on the uniform, suitably detailed, and I have no complaints about these. And then our second Death Star trooper here, and we get the darker skin tone. Again, very useful to swap around for Rebel troops, and I do like that because these dark helmet style helmets are so big, they can actually be swapped around with the double-sided faces, so that's useful. Hot Tub Trooper here gets the dual molded legs, the only one in the set to get them, which I think is very funny for his swim trunks there. And then, and that we've seen that before with like Bikini Leia in the recent Jabba sail barge. They don't want this weird kind of thong look in the back, so they give him the dual molded legs so that it's consistent, the color throughout. He's got the Imperial logo there on his shorts, and he's having way too much fun being in a fascist empire with his face there, and then there's how he looks with the helmet on, so that's fun. And we have our lineup of stormtroopers here, of course, all identical bodies. I'll give you a look at each of their faces up close. And what's really cool about these different faces and skin tones and genders is that it's really, really useful for custom building. And it's also really nice to have a diverse range of different representations of humans in the Star Wars world. But it does have the unfortunate side effect of making it seem like the Empire was almost entirely made up of people of color, which it's just a weird feeling when you're putting this together. I don't know, it felt odd, but it totally makes sense from a toy perspective, and diversity is obviously important, and having a representation of a bunch of different skin tones and nationalities and genders and all of that kind of stuff is really good and useful as well as a toy and as a Lego collector. So I don't have any complaints about that. So looking at this lineup of figures, I mean, you can definitely tell that they went for a mass approach here, like getting as many characters into the set as possible because the Death Star is so huge and you really need a lot of characters to populate it. I think if they had included a few more instances of dual molded legs, so just the one for 3PO and the two for the Imperial officers and Tarkin maybe, so those characters, getting the dual molded legs would have really silenced 99% of the criticism from Lego enthusiasts, because the Stormtroopers all look great, all of their uniforms are fine, all the Imperial officers' uniforms are mainly fine, and the ground crew and stuff, and it's really just those couple of obvious omissions that kind of throw the mix off a little bit. So they were close, but I think that they did include the appropriate amount of figures. I actually think we probably could do with a few more figures, because you'll see when we get into the Death Star, there's definitely a lot of different scenes that rely on multiple versions of characters existing if you want to populate them at the same time, and you sort of have to pick and choose which rooms you have less populated and which rooms you have filled up. So I'll show you that when we get into the actual Death Star in a bit, but overall I'm not too unhappy about the figures. I think they're mainly fine. All right, so the Death Star itself, I'll give you a quick little overview here as if you don't know what it looks like already from the million different reviews and and media that's been done about this. Obviously, this has been a very highly publicized set, but just wanted to give you a quick overview of it in my setup and how it looks right now. The illumination behind these sections right here that make it look like these are lit up is just the fact that I have a white backdrop with light spilling behind there that makes that kind of look lit up. So that's not like, you know, lit in any way, but that is cool though. I think that's a nice idea that they left those, or using those pieces that have the light that can come through. So that's all very well and good. So let's start with the bottom section and work our way up in the same exact order that you build the thing in. So starting with the hangar bay, let's take a look at all the different features and things included in this giant set. So, well, technically the first thing that you build is this big base at the bottom here, and it's kind of crazy how many bags go into just the base before you start building anything up on the top here to actually place figures on. But yeah, obviously the Death Star is massive and it needs some support. So then once you finally do get up here, you start building the hangar bay out, and it feels very satisfying. The use of stickers here on the ground I think is forgivable, although it definitely would have been easy enough to include using all of the different cut tile designs that we have in Lego now, just putting those details in there with actual physical bricks. But again, that would eat into the budget. The cavernous nature of this feels good to me. I actually think the gift with purchase that I'm not really going to talk about much in this set because I don't think it should exist in the way that it does. But this space right here actually feels better empty to me. So I actually don't mind that there's nothing to sit there, because the way that this hangar bay feels, you want it to feel like this cavernous interior space, very operatic, and especially once you start filling it up with figures and things, it starts to feel cramped very quickly, and with the TIE Fighter too, so I actually don't mind that at all. But yeah, nice sticker detail in the front here where it can be seen, and then they don't bother with stickers on the back, which is perfectly good and fine. It is funny that this hole just goes into nothing, but this is meant to be the sort of cargo freight elevator thing that brings things up to the hangar bay, but it's just a hole. But that's fine, you know, it is what it is. And then we have our first entrance to the elevator down here. The elevator's not here right now, but that's cool. And then lots of little details here on the wall, so R2 can interface with the computer and figure out how to deactivate the trash compactors or something to that effect. And that's cool. And if we take out that Imperial Shuttle there, you can see the nice stripe detailing on the wall here, which is just a whole individual section that you build and then just clip in, and that looks really good. And then we have the backdrop here as well, which works really well. It's kind of being ruined, the effect is being ruined right now by how much light is in here, but when it's in a normal lighting conditions in a room, this looks suitably dark, and then the starfield pops the way that you'd want it to. You can kind of see there though, depending on the angle that you look at, of course, you can see through the bricks because it's one brick thick back there, but I totally don't mind that at all. It's totally fine. Personally, I actually would have omitted the large elements here and just gone with the minifigure wand pieces because they have such a good look to them. They kind of look like stars because there's a little bit of a cross pattern on the base of these wands, and you know, that looks really good. It's unfortunate that they stick out of the back of the Death Star and it kind of looks like a mess, but overall, I think that the effect works really well, and you know, I'm glad that they did it. Though I think I would have made this section removable, but we'll talk a little bit about that in my overview of things I would have done differently. But I do think that for play, this should have been removable so that you can have your shuttle, you know, going in and out, or you know, at least play that it's going in and out, right, without this just being a solid wall that you can't do anything with. And I actually think that when I was building this, I actually preferred the feel of this space when this was open, and then once you put that in, it kind of actually feels a bit more claustrophobic, and it sort of takes away from the space, in my opinion. But I know a lot of people really like this, and I like the execution of it, and I think it works well, but there was just something that made me a little bit sad when I put it in, actually, which is a weird feeling. But yeah, I think that openness is what I want out of this space, and this just helped to kind of close it in, box it in a little bit. And then I'll talk about the Imperial Shuttle as well in a minute in its own section. But then next up here we have the trash compactor, which does look very nice. I actually was thinking that this was going to feel way too crunched down and way too scaled down compared to the diorama set that we got of it, but actually it feels good. I actually really like this space, and there's a lot of fun little details in here. Like you can see in the back there's cutlery, there's a little red mug back there as well. Ordinarily though, this is very dark and hard to see. In my studio setup I have light flooding in from all angles, right? But Ordinarily, this is really, really wasted detail back here because you really can't make out any of it. But once you shine a light in there, it looks great. And then, of course, we have the function of the walls being able to close in, and you can actually place 3 figures in here and they can fit. And of course, we also have the Dianoga, which comes up when you close the walls. That's a great little function. Very simple in the way that it's executed, but it looks really nice. I would personally think I would have preferred to get the full Dianoga build as a creature, but then, you know, where do you put it? And there's all those kind of considerations, and then it just becomes another figure that you can throw in there, but it does, the neatness of that little function is lost there. So yeah, it's kind of a give and take, but you know, overall I think I like what they did. One little thing I wanted to mention though is some false advertising in the packaging. It makes it seem like this is a way deeper section than it is, because they have Luke Skywalker in here with his legs removed to make it look like you can place a figure down in here where it's like swimming in the water, as Luke does in that scene. I think that's a little bit of shady marketing right there. I don't care for that. But yeah, so you cannot, this is just a flat bottom right here. And then in order to access more light and have ease of placing your figures in here, this top section can come out, and that is the official reason for that section to be removable, which is nice. There is a second function for this area here, which is that you can drop figures into it from the prison block, and I'll show you that in a minute when we get up to the prison block. And then we do have this little kind of liminal space in here, which isn't really intended to be part of the Death Star, but it's just sort of a byproduct of the overall shape that they were going for. But they did include these couple of exposed studs here and there so that you can place Obi-Wan and Vader to be having their final fight, and then you can look through the doors here and you can see them from the hangar bay. And I think that works well enough. It was nice that they included something here for that, so that you could actually make use of the space outside of this door. And I do like the build for this door as well, even though I think it would have been smart to make these pieces here be in dark bluish gray, so that you could tell that these are the blast doors that can close, and that it would separate those from the design just a little bit. But overall, I like the shape of this whole section. It feels fine, nice and sturdy. And then, you know, you can see out here, of course, when your characters run out of here, they're going to fall straight into the pit and into space, but there you go, that's fine. But yeah, I do think that they look suitably nice when framed in this doorway here, when you're looking through it from this side. So yeah, it's a shame about the trash compactor being right there, but if you just kind of frame it very carefully so that they're out of the way of that, you can just pretend that it's not there. So that's fine. Then moving up to the next section here, we have the little opening door that houses the area where the little interrogation droid can sit, or the torture droid. And you can just push him out of there because he's got the little sort of ramp into the entrance there. And then he can be patrolling the halls looking for someone to torture. We do have the first of our set of pill lights here, which look really great. Those are printed elements that are present throughout the Death Star, and the designer said that it would be too much of a pain to ask everyone to apply whatever it is, 24 of these, I think, to get them straight and to get them to look, you know, nice. So thankfully they did those as a print. Then we have all these little kind of water fountain looking kind of details here, which are very accurate to what we see in the actual Death Star corridors, so that's nice. And then they have intermittent studs here to place figures on. And that's something I sort of take a little bit of issue with throughout the whole set. I'll talk about that later in my things I would have done differently. But it's just like, it kind of feels limiting to have just these single set spots here and there to place figures, and then everywhere else is tiled off. And then at the end of this hallway just terminates with the second door into the elevators there, and it has a unique sticker on it compared to the one below. So you can see there, the top of the elevator indicators are all different, and I like that. And then coming back across the hangar bay into this little overhang kind of control room here, which is a really nicely designed, detailed room with a bunch of stickers and angled walls to give the impression of all these computer consoles here. And all of those graphics look suitably excellent. We have a couple of swiveling chairs that are nice builds, kind of reminds me of the chair that Han has in the Falcon, which is funny because this is also the chair that Han is kind of intended to sit in and be all snarky. We have this window that you can look through here made with a sideways door piece with a trans-clear element in there, and that looks great, and a couple of blasters here as well, and some dog fur as well. So there you go, it's an extra treat for you guys. With a little coffee mug here for the supervising officer to drink out of. It's really, really hard to get figures, especially into the back seat there, and you know, you can stand an officer right here, that's pretty easy, but yeah, getting somebody back in here is not easy, and also seeing the details in here once again is tricky because, and there's no well, there's a removable section on this one, but and it lets in a little bit more light, but it does still feel dark most of the time, and that's kind of just a feature of the fact that everything in the Death Star is stacked up here, kind of dollhouse style, and so it is hard for light to get in most of the time. But with the upstairs room removed, it does look a little bit better. I think we probably could have gotten away with some more genuine Lego building here for these details, but you know, the stickers look good, so I'm not going to complain about it too much. They even included stickers all, you know, down on these panel pieces right here for the consoles right in front of the characters to be working at. So, you know, it all looks great. The graphic design is really nice. It's just that, again, it's tough to pose figures in here, and it's tough to see in there. And here you can see when you start to pose figures in here, it gets cramped very quickly. But here you can have Luke trying to convince Han to go after and rescue Princess Leia. And he says, how much could a Lego Death Star really cost? And he says, more wealth than you could imagine. And Han says, I don't know, I can imagine quite a bit. The only other thing I wanted to mention about this room is it feels like there needed to be a little ladder, even if it's just in black so it's less standy outy, but something here to get the characters up into this room, because it's the only space in the Death Star that is inaccessible by minifigures, and that you have to kind of use your imagination of how they get up there. All right, and then moving back up over to the left side here, the next section that you build is the prison block, which looks really great. The orange or dark orange floors there look really, really good with all the grill tiles. Feels suitably prison-esque. And we have a little graphic here to show the corridor extending off into infinity, and that's really nice. Behind here is Leia's jail cell. It's really, really difficult to open this part up though. If I could just... Okay, there we go. So I edited that down, but it took me a lot longer than it might seem. So in there you can see Leia's jail cell, and then that is removable. I'll show you that in a second. And then this is the hole that Leia blasts in the wall to allow everyone to escape down into the trash compactor. So I really like the fact that they included a corridor below this so that the figures sort of magically pass through this section into the trash compactor. I know a lot of people questioned why not put the trash compactor on this level, so they just drop straight down, and then this would have been a cleaner backdrop for the Obi-Wan Vader fight. But I actually think that the magic of having this section here for them to pass through feels worth it, in my opinion. So let's take a look at the little Leia jail cell. So to access that, you just pull off this little side panel here, and then you can actually pull out the entire jail cell. So with this section removed, you can see there you can place Leia to be down in her sarcastic pose there, taunting Luke about how short he is, and then you can have the torture droid come in, which is, again, very grim. There's a lot of things about this Death Star that are very grim for kids to think about. And then there's also a stud here, so you could place Vader if you wanted to have him overseeing Leia's interrogation, but again, it's uncomfortably close and cramped. I probably would move this jumper plate back here somewhere so that Vader could be standing a little bit further away, just so that it feels less awkward with him just standing right here over her, and it kind of isn't really good for posing anyway. And then, you know, she has a little cup there, so I guess they're not being too inhumane. She can at least have water. So yeah, there's that. And the torture droid, like I said, usually sits on the little clear base, but in here you can place it on this clip. And you can see there, Leia is visible through the door when it opens, when that prison cell is in there. And then here you can see Luke goes down into the trash compactor hole, and then comes out down here. And again, that does feel very magical. It's something that I actually replicated a version of this for my Hogwarts build, where the characters were able to go through multiple sections of the castle and wind up in another place down a chute. So it's really nice to see LEGO implement a feature like that in an official set and do it so very well. So that's great. The fact that they even come sort of diagonally down is another thing that kind of adds to the magic feel of it. Like they don't feel like they should end up here when they go down there. So yeah, very well executed on that. And I think the overall look of the jail cell is great. And then the little control room here has all the suitable little rotatable control consoles that you'd expect. These ones are sort of fixed in place, but the ones at the front can be fully swiveled. And they have unique graphics on each one with stickers there. And then the implied doors at the back for the elevator. So again, you can do the Wookiee prisoner bit, except that Chewie doesn't have the cuffs. And then they can blast the security cameras here as well. And you can kind of like, push those down to show that they've been deactivated once you shoot them. So that's cool. A little bit more of the pill lights back here on either side framing that. And then a doorway that takes you through to the next elevator door right here. And you can see in this case that the elevator is here. and there's an indication right there with the white ingot piece that tells you that the elevator is on this floor. So that's a really nice little design detail for the elevator there. And then moving over, we have a little Easter egg. So this wall is removable, and you can see here the main reactor of the Death Star, which is itself also removable. So it's this little build right here, and you can just imagine the teeny tiny Falcon coming in here and blowing this up. So this is sort of a Return of the Jedi bit. And of course, that shape back there is a little bit of a reference to A New Hope, where Luke shoots the proton torpedo down the exhaust shaft, and it's this exact shape, so that leads down to the reactor. So it's all kind of a cohesive thing, and I really like that. And you could even, you could pretend like you could poke a finger in the back there and knock out the reactor yourself manually, so it's like you're blowing up the Death Star from the outside. So that's cool. That's a nice little feature. It doesn't eat up too many parts, and I like the build of this with the kind of glass behind it. That's a useful part to get. And then you could just place this in here, and then pull it out with this ball joint when you want to gain access to it. So it's a nice little Easter egg, and I like it. And then the bridge continues over, and we get the next section. So we have the area where Obi-Wan needs to deactivate the tractor beam, of course, and these are the control consoles for him to do that at. This whole section can swivel in and out because it's on this little arm right here. I actually really like the technique of how they were able to pinch that in top and bottom. And then the actual turntable thing here is rotatable slightly. So they give you the handles here so you can have Obi-Wan holding on. But yeah, there's really not enough room for a character to stand here, which is, again, quite accurate because Obi-Wan had to be on his tiptoes to do this, very kind of sneakily. And then I like the overall build. The shape of this feels nice. This feels a little awkward how separated out these sections are. I think probably if it was just straight like this, it would have been fine. But yeah, I understand why they're doing that. They're trying to capture that sort of conical shape of this thing. And then you can have the Stormtrooper standing in here, of course, looking the other way because they got distracted. And then this bridge right here with the 45-degree angle, or no, not quite 45. Well, is it? Yeah. But it looks really nice. The way that they did it with the different wedge plates in there and then situating it with the double ball joints on the bottom feels really good. The one above it is retractable. So you can see there's a little gear for that. And, but yeah, the one below here is just fixed in place. But yeah, done well. And then when you cross that bridge and you get over to this section here, there's a little area here with a stud to place a figure, and you can have this little door slide open, which I think is kind of a waste of parts if you ask me, because you really can't even see in there. You definitely can't like get your hands in there to, place a figure going through the door. But that's the entrance into Darth Vader's meditation chamber, which itself is removable. So with this section removed here, you can take off the top part completely. You take your helmetless Vader, and you can place him down in the center here, so he has his little consoles side to side that he can rotate around, so he can be playing Angry Birds or whatever it is that he does in here. There's no screen or anything, but he has all these buttons, and I'm just curious what they do. And then there's even a little clip down here for you to place his lightsaber, so that when he's meditating, that can be held somewhere and you don't lose it. Of course, his helmet can just be off. I don't know exactly where you want to place that, but you can just stick it there. And then also there's some spots here where you can have Imperial characters coming in to talk to Vader and presumably give him bad news. And then the actual lid part, you can place it back on top, or you can place it underneath this little kind of beam here, this support beam, and that indicates that it is in the sort of closed-ish position. Of course, it is very gappy, but that's mainly down to the fact that it's such a tiny design. But it functions okay. I think the fact that they thought to even include a little clip down here is nice. And the fact that it's removable makes it a lot more, easy to play with. And the fact that you can fully remove this whole top section, again, makes it possible to place a Vader down in there without too much hassle, so that's cool. And then in the back of the room, you can see Palpatine is doing a video call to annoy Vader, and you can actually remove this little section here. And I guess in order to be able to make it just be black, I don't think that's a super useful function, but I guess it makes it a little bit more serious, a little bit more clean back there when you don't have the Palpatine face. And then we have a bunch of little Easter eggs in here. So a little sexy Padme poster there with the love heart on it. So I guess Vader's reminiscing. He's got a string model hanging of his N1 starfighter, the Boonta Eve sort of victory poster there. Palpatine and Vader on the beach, which is a little reference to a previous Lego Star Wars set. And a sort of Imperial recruitment poster up here. Join the Empire, look at Vader, he's awesome, kind of a thing. So yeah, all of that is very nice. And then once you place the meditation chamber in there, of course, it's very hard to see all of that, but you can still access a view of it. if you know where to look. But you know, with the thing actually in here, like the characters that are behind here, like you can just see Tarkin's face poking through there, and Vader for that matter. But they're pretty well hidden, so I don't think that the need for that Palpatine switcheroo thing back there was really that essential, because most of the time you don't really see it anyway. But it is a nice graphic. I like the look of it. I would have actually preferred it to be reversible and have the scene where Vader's choking. Again, I forget which background Imperial it was, through the screen there. I think it would have been cool if we had a secondary sticker to represent that scene, so you could choose which scene you want rather than just scene or no scene. But you know, regardless, the scene here functions decently well, and I quite like the whole effect. And then moving up from there, we have the Imperial meeting room. So the chairs are swivelable here, at least the ones on the corners are. The main ones here are not. The table itself is removable, so that gives you easier access to place your figures in here, because even though this sticks out and has the sort of rounded base and feels like it should be removable, it is not. It is fixed in place permanently, but you know, that's fine. And then yeah, the details there for the back walls look really nice. The way that the pattern of all that comes together is very satisfying. The table here looks suitably good with the little holo projector on it, and then also here we have the tall chair with the sort of spiky bat ears on it. I believe that's Tarkin's chair back there. So you can set up your 8 Imperials in here to be having a little spirited debate about various Imperial matters. And then we also have a sliding door here, which just leads out into a void, unless of course you have the bridge deployed, which you can do. So then everyone can depart from their meeting without falling into a chasm of doom. So that's cool. The space out here does, of course, double for the chasm that Luke swings over, so that does kind of get in the way, but this part right here is actually fairly easy to remove if you don't want to see that most of the time. And I think the detailing in this chasm area is also very nice. We'll take a closer look at that in a sec. But going back to the office, I think it's a pretty cramped space, but I think that they did the best that they possibly could with it. There's not really room for characters to be standing around because of the opening door. I actually think, personally, the door wasn't needed, and you could have just left that as an open doorway there, and then had space for a couple of figures to be standing off to the side. That would have been a preferable use of the space in my opinion, but let me show you what it looks like with all the Imperials in there. So you can see here you do have room enough to place your figures in here, and there's a couple of the lower ranking Imperial officers here that I just threw in the front with their faces, you know, faced away from us to just give the impression that the room is a lot more full. And I've also taken Krennic off the stand, and I just kind of placed Vader back there. There's not really a good way to stand him down there, but if he's just standing there being all intimidating, I think that works absolutely fine. So you can definitely set up a nice Imperial meeting scene in here, and I think this is a really successful representation of this room overall. And again, the door I don't think was necessary, but it is nice that it closes to give them the privacy that their probably very secret conversations need to have. So yeah, that's all good, and this area works, like I said, pretty well. So then, of course, you can place your Leia and Luke figures, and you can remotely activate, using this little gear up here, the swinging feature. And they can swing pretty far across, though these parts right here do get in the way a little bit, but I really like the way that those look. The details of them, they look great. They really feel like super authentic to what we see in the movie, and the part where Luke throws up the grappling hook and kind of, you know, latches onto those. It all feels great. So one thing I do think that this area, it feels very expansive in the sort of downward direction, owing to the fact that, you know, smartly they place this above the hangar bay so that you have this really long channel going all the way down. But one thing I think that they could have done here is that there's wasted space in the Z depth dimension, so going back in space. And I think that this wall could have been placed back 2, 3, or even 4 studs more without changing the design really at all. And that would have actually been a huge improvement to making this feel even more cavernous of a space than it does currently. But as it is, I like this space overall. I think it feels pretty good. So then moving over here, you can see there's a little kind of a area that's just nondescript with a couple more or 4 more of those pill light pieces there. Again, the entrance to the next elevator section right here. And then there's a little Imperial bulletin board. Let's see if I can get a good angle on that for you guys. You can see there a bunch of Easter eggs, the wanted posters, the Stormtrooper target practice, the Ula from Jabba's palace there, the little poster for her, and then the T-16 Skyhopper little Easter egg there is great. And then moving leftward from that, we have the bridge of the Death Star. So you can see back there Alderaan, and then this removable section here, so you can place your figures on this little platform. So with that section removed, you can set up a little scene here where, you know, they're targeting. They have the little, these are all the same print out right here at the front, but these are unique for the console pieces. Those look nice. I'm not sure if there was a weird printing error on mine, or if these are supposed to be sort of a weird faded look, but yeah, the actual ink on these does not look very good. But this looks great, so I'm just wondering if this was meant to be, like I said, like an effect. But yeah, these all look really nice, and then we have just a couple of little you know, details here on the ground, like the tiny little bit of the vent in the trans red color there, and I think that looks really nice, and they definitely didn't need to do it that way. And then back here, just a couple of, like I said, just jumper studs here to attach figures. But I really think that if you're gonna, you know, if you're gonna have a few jumper studs around, just put a few more. Just put some here and here. You can have them in symmetrical patterns if it feels better to you. But I still feel like, you know, it didn't need to be this tiled off. But then there's a problem, right? So you have your scene all set up, and then you go to insert the whole scene back into the Death Star, and Tarkin gets taken out because there's not enough space in here with the actual laser cannon assembly that gets right in the way of where you want your figures to be placed. And I'm placing them, you know, on the studs that are designated for placing characters on. So that's a little bit of an annoyance. And you can see in here overall, even though this is a very expansive space, it's actually quite cramped feeling. And that's due to the fact that the Death Star laser cannon does take up so much of the room. It is designed in such a way where it can just kind of be removed fairly easily, so this whole block could just kind of come out. And it's just sort of sitting there. It's not really attached with anything per se. So yeah, this is just kind of the whole area where this sits. I'm going to come back to these in a minute. They look great, but there's a big problem with them production-wise. But yeah, the actual area where the Death Star laser sits is fine. This is all, you know, kind of blank back here, but it really doesn't need to have anything. But with it removed, this whole area feels much more expansive now, and you can see here when you place your figures down, they don't get knocked over. So I think personally, I like this space without the laser in it. And when I get to the section of the things I would have done differently, I'll talk about what I would have done instead. But you can see here, Leia can be witnessing the destruction of Alderaan on the screen, right? Very cool, very mean. Another thing that's just like super crazy hardcore about this this toy, which is that you're witnessing the entire people be decimated. But yeah, it's just a little gear over here, and then that runs an axle through, and then that rotates the view screen there. It would have been nice to get a secondary set of stickers, because there's two 2x5 bricks that make up this display. So those could have been double-sided, and the stickers on the other side could have been swapped for Jeddah and Jeddah City, you know, being blown up, and then having, you know, we have Krennic, and he could see the view screen and say, oh, it's beautiful, right? That could have been a really cool thing to include. That feels like a little bit of a miss to me. But at least Alderaan is the most important one, and they got that in here, so that's cool. I'll take this opportunity to show you some of the pipes and things that they put in the back here while the Death Star cannon is removed, and then give you a view into this window right here. So this all feels very nice and deluxe in terms of how this comes together. And then the room itself inside of here also feels very nice, although it's super cramped and hard to put figures into. But we'll get into that in a second. But I just wanted to take a second to show you the super laser before we get to that. So you can see here the build is very nice. The intentional texture of these anti-studs on the inside to give it that differentiation between the outer ring and the inner ring feels very nice to me. The inner part here is kind of flimsy and can just be knocked off fairly easily. I've done it a few times. So it's just attached in here with not a super secure connection, so that is a little bit of a long-term stability issue. But if you don't, if you don't knock it, then it's fine. And then the other thing is that all of these individual Death Star lasers have to be manually aligned, and you can see now I have knocked it out of alignment, and that's a big pain in the butt to get those all to be fixed. But the overall effect is pleasing, and I generally like how this turned out, and I like the fact that they included a little hidden Easter egg back here in the form of the little things that Cassian and pals were making in prison and on Narkina 5, and that's the little thing that went into the Death Star itself. So with this section removed, you can gain access to the little Easter egg part right here. So yeah, these are the things that we're making in the prison, making over and over and over again, and it sits right back here. But actually, with that section removed and with this out, you can not only appreciate the Easter egg, but you can now fit your little platform back in here and it doesn't interfere with the figures any longer. So my suggestion is to actually just leave that part off of the Death Star laser cannon, put this somewhere where it can be appreciated as the Easter egg that it is, right? It's meant to be seen, and then just discard this, or put it somewhere else, or have it be a big light fixture right here. There you go. I don't know, do something else with it, but yeah, just I think it's nicer to be able to see this Easter egg, and the functionality is actually improved without that in there. And then this part right here is the sort of Death Star firing control room, where you see all those blinking lights going on and off, and that looks great. I like that they actually did that with brick built detail instead of a sticker. And then back in there is the two sort of laser activators, that the switch that they would throw to actually fire the laser. So that's all well and good, and like I said, I like the window looking out. Trouble is, it's really, really difficult to get figures in here. Let me see if I can get the figure studded down to look out the window. Okay, so I guess, yeah, there you go. Got one. And then get the other one in here facing towards the console, like he's gonna actually do the firing. So, you can do it, you can get him in there, but it is a tight squeeze. I do like that they made these rooms overall on average taller than your average Lego playset room would be, because otherwise it'd be really truly impossible to get your hands in there. And then we have the other elevator door here, which kind of doubles up almost as a door to close this room up. But yeah, it opens in a different direction to all the other ones. And that's why they had to have the ingot pieces for the elevator be on both sides, because there is one door that opens on this side. But yeah, you can kind of see here, like, it is really hard to tell where that is, right? So whether it's there or not there. And like I said, I'm flooding this whole set with light right now from all sides, and it's still really hard for me to tell. So while I think that's a really nice idea, I don't think that the execution of it actually holds up that well. And then we'll go up a floor here. So this is just right above it, the final elevator door right here. And then a little bit of walkway, again, a couple more jumper studs right here. And then this whole removable wall, which you could bust out. And that's really just to cover up the Easter egg of the little hot tub stormtroopers area. And if you want to access that more easily, you can actually lift this whole roof section up, and then you can just gain access to the removable hot tub that way. So you can actually reach in here and just pull this out by the rubber ducky. And that works really well. And you can just place your hot tub stormtrooper in there to be having a good time. I like the little detail, the way that the stairs are done in here. It looks really nice, actually. He's got a little console here to control, I guess, temperature and bubbles and whatnot. And then back there, he's got a little radio and a microphone and a little scrubbing brush. And I think what's supposed to be like a shampoo bottle next to the radio there, or some soap or something. And that's that. So yeah, he's having a good old time in there. So it's not so much a hot tub as it's a bathtub. So maybe we should rename it Bathtub Stormtrooper. But I do like that this section here is removable. And then this is the elevator control area right here. So, you just twist it one way or the other, and you could see the elevator coming up here up to the top level like so. And I guess now's as good a time as I need to talk about the elevator. So you can just basically place two figures standing in there. The space is relatively generous, so you can have a figure standing with a medium-sized accessory. So like your Death Star Trooper with this big old rifle right here, I don't believe is going to work. I think that's going to be too big to fit in there. But let me just try it out. So yeah, obviously that's not going to work, right? The thing is sticking out of the door, but you could, if you really want to transport your Death Star Trooper, you can turn the rifle sideways and you can have him just kind of holding it like that, and then that will fit. So that's actually pretty nice. And yeah, the design of it is pretty genius. There's a little channel in there that your minifigure legs slot into. So you can definitely, get a good range of different characters going there. Obviously things like astromech droids, mouse droids and whatever aren't going to fit in there, but you can just pretend for those and just put the regular minifigs in. But overall, I think it's a really nice, well executed design. It's very simple, and watching it descend is very satisfying. You can do it pretty smoothly because of the way that it's done with these worm gears right here. And then there's just a plate on the back of this that has a unique pattern on it that engages with those worm gear pieces that goes all the way down. And it just works really smoothly. And having it go down every single floor, connecting up the entire Death Star from top to bottom is great. The only thing that I think sucks about it is that there's just one room that is missed and everything else is accessible. But it's a pretty minor nitpick, honestly. So then moving over to the Emperor's throne room, let me close this door back up. So you can see here we have two little platforms off to the side. We have these weird computer console looking thingies. I'm never quite sure what those were supposed to be. A couple of studs here so you can have Luke and Vader fighting it out in front of the Emperor or climbing the stairs. And then the swiveling seat of doom back here with a nice view out the window. And it's a very similar style of build to what we got in the diorama, both the window, the way that it's done, and the seat and the technique for holding in the big window in the back all feel very reminiscent of that set, although slightly scaled down for this one, and I think it actually holds up pretty well, works pretty well. There's a couple of open windows back there, so you can actually get light through underneath these stairs, which I think is nice. And I think probably canonically accurate as well, because I do seem to remember there being windows under there when Luke and Vader, Vader is stalking Luke underneath this platform type area. Although, obviously this is scaled down, you can't put any minifigures back there, but that's fine. And then this little single platform right here, if you push this little actuator, will fall down, and so you can have Luke topple off of that, and that works fine. It's a little bit of a twitchy mechanism. If you just touch it, he goes, so that's cool. But I think the whole setup there, it feels a little gimmicky. The actual scene had a big old gantry that gets kind of chopped. It wasn't just like an awkward little platform off to one side with no way to access it, and then this one doesn't do anything. It's also hinged in the same way to that one, but it doesn't go anywhere. And then also, I should mention, you can take off this whole section right here so you can get additional light into this space, which is much needed. And the space should feel pretty cavernous. And it's not attached with any studs or anything, so you literally just place that in there. And then out to the front here, so we have the continuous walkway that goes out onto this gantry with these nice details where you can have Luke lying over here like he's been shocked, and you can see a skeleton coming through. There's a couple of studs here and here, so you can securely place your Emperor's Guard. And then out here you can have the final sort of throw down, because Vader can throw Palpatine off down this gap, which leads all the way down to, you can see there, to the hangar bay. And that's, again, really smart design. By creating some relief out from the set for this section, it creates a gap that can go all the way through and bypass all the other floors and go straight down to the bottom, so you can really kill the Emperor but good, at least temporarily. And then the walkway continues over here, and then there's just a little bit of indication of our secret room off to the side there, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. But overall, I think that this throne room scene works pretty well. So there you go. You can see here with figures in place, so we have the royal guards can actually stand on the walkways off to the side, or you can place them here at the entrance to the stairs, whatever feels right to you. And of course, I keep saying you can pose them here or there. Like, of course, you can put figures anywhere, but unless they're this guy with the skirt piece, they're very likely to fall over, and if you even breathe on the Death Star. So that is one thing that's you kind of want to place them in a place where they, long term, where they won't just fall over. So that's why I'm referring to those studded areas. You can put the little clips down here, I think are meant to be to hold Palpatine's little lightning accessories, but it's very funny to think of him having this sort of lightning powered chair. And then of course Vader and Luke can be fighting down here, and the Grand Vizier guy can be standing off to one side and being annoying, or you can place him up here and then knock him down for a little extra bit of story detail that you can add to Return of the Jedi. Take out the Vizier before you get to Palpy himself. But yeah, like I mentioned, with you kind of want to have Luke sort of over here, beaten and defeated without killing him. So you can sort of place him down on the stud here, maybe, but I mean, really, you want him to be sort of crouching down, cowering by this part right here. So you can just sort of place him down there, and then you can have Palpy over here. Again, not really studded down or anything, but he can be over here, and then Vader can come and give him the old boot heave-ho, and he'll wind up down here. It'd be cool if he had bounced and went down the hole even further, but there you go. So, the functionality of that, I think, feels good. The distance that the figure falls does feel suitably epic for a Death Star ending scene there. The fact that you can get extra light in here is really, really helpful, and I actually think the build of all of this feels really nice. It feels very similar to the diorama set, but it's the same subject matter, so why wouldn't it feel similar? And then last, and I guess maybe also least, there's the little Death Star cannon over here with a spot to put your gunner down here, just sitting on the floor. And man, this guy looks like he has a lonely day at work, doesn't he? He just goes and sits up here and waits to be given orders to fire on things. And then you could just kind of have to jiggle this to get it to fit back in place, and the cannon sticks out the side of the Death Star. I actually think that given how clean the overall silhouette of the Death Star is, I don't particularly like how this pokes out of the side. I actually think, and wait for my suggestions part of the video of how I would have done things to see what I think, but I think I would have personally not had this be in here, and I would have instead included a little Easter egg that made a little bit more sense. So canonically, according to The Rise of Skywalker now, we know that there's a little chamber off to the side where Palpatine kept his little secret doodads. So what I would have done, I think, is had a sort of a dark shrine of some sort in here, and maybe a little reference like the piece representing the Sith Wayfinder, to just give a nod to the fact that, yeah, Palpatine keeps some of his treasures close by to his throne room. And then the idea that's very funny to me of the gunner, the Death Star gunner, coming up here, walking along this little gangway over here to go to work in his little gun room over here every day is kind of funny to me. And so I just feel like this felt a little bit like a waste of space to, I mean, I'm glad that they put something in there, right? This could have easily just been empty, like a lot of these sections along the side are just sort of empty, hollow space. So I'm glad that they put something in here, but I think the choice of what was in here, I would have swapped it around personally. But the cannon itself does look really nice, and at least there is a spot there for your gunner to officially sit and do his business, so yeah. And then again, here we have the build of the MIDI scale shuttle. So you can see here you can place a figure in the front and you can close it up. It has just a single stud connection there for the cockpit window, and then you can actually kind of adjust that and get it just situated correctly. And then Palpy can be lying here in the back. Place the back section on top of that. And then we have the wings able to go up and down, and then some fairly accurate detailing around. Like I like the shaping of the engines here and the representation for the back cannon there, so that's cool. Even these little side details here next to the wings feel like a nod to an actual detail on the shuttle, so that's cool. And then the wings are nice and stable, so that's fairly strong, and you can even pick the thing up by the removable section without it falling down, because it's so light overall. And then the wings can fold up to a very pleasing angle here as well. And we have a little retractable landing gear as well. So that's all very nice and very well done, and I appreciate it. I do think that on the aesthetic front, because there's so much stuff that they're trying to get this to actually do, it does suffer just a little bit proportion-wise. The head feels very, very large, of course, because we're fitting a minifigure in there. But I think with the wings down, it feels pretty good. It feels pretty nice, and I think it was a good idea to include this in the set rather than a MIDI scale Falcon, which would have also been heavy on compromises and probably not been quite as pleasing to look at as a final result. So yeah, I think this actually was the right choice, even though in the beginning I was actually questioning, when I saw the leaked images of this, whether or not the shuttle was the right choice. But I think having built it now, it does feel like it was the correct choice. So good job, designer, on that. And I'm just going to give you a quick look at the Easter eggs and things around the back. So we have the mini kit here from the LEGO Star Wars games, and also the currency from the LEGO Star Wars games, the different colored studs, purple being the most valuable. That's why there's only one. And we have a little stormtrooper height measurement here, and of course you can place a trooper in there. And you can see that this stormtrooper is regulation height, but then so is Luke Skywalker, so I feel like Leia was just gaslighting him about that. Then I really like how there's an open window here that you can see into the hot tub room, or the hot tub stormtrooper can see out of. And here's a view at the other side of the little kind of Death Star exhaust port looking detail that leads right to the center of the Death Star. Also down here in the base, there's a little nod to the Octan, kind of fictional evil fossil fuel corporation within the LEGO mythos, so there's a little nod to that right down in there. But then the rest of it is just utility for, just the consequence of the build looking the way that it does. So, you have the whole elevator shaft, the backs of the stars poking out here, the backs and the insides of curved walls, and all the kind of different techniques that you can see here for the different rooms, how that all comes together. So kind of exposes a lot of the build techniques back here. You can see the little Alderaan switcheroo, and you can see how I mentioned these are two different bricks in here that could have been potentially made reversible, but I think you'd probably have to disassemble a lot of stuff that you probably don't want to disassemble. But yeah, you can see back here, there's really no Technic holding this thing together. It's really a true system build. The only bits of Technic are like in just to hold the axles to pin the elevator shaft mechanism in. The rest of it is just Lego system bricks stacked up with a few brackets to hold things in place, to kind of pinch things from the side. But it's actually kind of an engineering marvel that it stands up the way that it does, and it doesn't feel particularly vulnerable. Though I am concerned about, casual picking up. You really should pick it up right here, but if you was to pick it up, at the sides, I think you could potentially have a disaster on your hands. And I really like how the Lego designer made use of basically every slope in the inventory, placed at different angles in order to capture the nice round feel of the edge of the Death Star. They really did make the best use and very efficient parts usage for all of the different slopes that are available, and the most recent angles as well, to really get that to be as curved as possible. And I think it feels really good. The actual arc of the roundness feels very, very successfully realized to me. So I just want to talk briefly about play patterns and how you're intended to act out stories within this Death Star. I think there's more than I initially thought that there was. I did feel when I first put it together, this felt like a collection of really disparate things that didn't all connect very well, but there are actually a lot of different things you could do. So for example, if you have this out of here and you pretend that the Falcon is in here, or if you place the currently existing midi-scale Falcon in here, which does fit, you can act out Obi-Wan, Luke, Han, 3PO, and R2-D2 and Chewbacca sneaking around the bottom levels of the Death Star, hiding up here, calling down the trooper, stealing the armor, and then hiding back up here and everything. And 3PO and R2 get left here. The gang goes in the elevator up to the prison block, while Obi-Wan goes off to deactivate the tractor beam. They rescue Leia. They all come down into this area here, into the garbage disposal, and then they escape, and they see the final fight happen between Obi-Wan and Vader, and then they get back on the Falcon. So all of that can really play out here very effectively, right? The meditation chamber definitely feels like the most on its own thing, and for that reason I would have actually omitted it from the Death Star entirely. I do have a suggestion for how I would do that. And then also the meeting room feels like very much its own thing. So this part right here kind of feels like it's its own little subsection that is not really meant to be interacted with in terms of the larger story of the whole Death Star, and that's fine. You can have Leia interrogated, captured, brought up here to see the destruction of Alderaan. You can look up here and see the gunners, getting ready to fire. So all of that feels very connected. And then also you can have the Imperial inspection, or Vader captures Luke, brings him aboard the Death Star. They go up to the throne room. They have the final showdown with Palpatine. Palpatine gets tossed down here, and then Luke and Vader can go back down the elevator, steal the shuttle, and then leave. So that kind of feels like a good area of play up and down between these sections here. So, there's a lot of individual stories that you can play out in this Death Star that do connect most of it together, but there are just those few sections that feel a little bit lacking. And the only thing that's really truly lacking to me is any representation for what's happening outside the Death Star. So we have the big, attack on the Death Star, the Battle of Yavin, and all of the X-Wings and TIE fighters trying to, do their thing on the outside, but we don't have anything to represent that. So I think personally that would have been the thing that I would have omitted some of the things that are in here, maybe given a little bit more open, expansive space to some areas to let them breathe a bit more, and then put that parts budget into representing the exterior battle in some fashion. Because I really like how this breaks out of the silhouette of the Death Star, and then I think to balance that out, rather than just having this one little element right here poking out of the cannon, we could have had a representation on this side of X-Wings versus TIE fighters trying to get to the trench to blow up the Death Star. But yeah, I think, the play patterns of all that stuff works really well. I do like how overall you're going up and down and left and right with this set, so you're definitely intended to play with it as if it's up against a wall. And then I do think that they made pretty good use of the Z space in here by extending out the throne room and extending out the hangar bay. That was definitely essential, but I think there are a couple of more areas where it would have been nice to get some things extended out more in certain areas to just feel like, for example, the meditation chamber, right? It's this rounded section that pokes out, But it feels like we could have extended that floor around rather than having it terminate in here, go around back into the Death Star. It would have been nice to have it sort of a corner area with more floor space that you could pose figures on, and just sort of more gesturing towards that roundness, like what they do on this bottom floor, how the things come out and around. It would have been nice to get some more of those areas around the side here, and that would have made it feel more spherical and feel less like the Death Slice that everybody's been making fun of. But on that subject, I do think that the Death Slice design is actually fine. And it's probably the way I would have done it if I had done a Death Star myself as a playset. I would have had a bunch of rooms that are essentially stacked on top of each other, so the characters can be running around up and down and left to right, and then try to gesture at the shape of the Death Star around the outside. So essentially what they've done here is probably what I would have arrived at myself, even though I, like everyone else, when I first saw the pictures of it, I balked a little bit at the presentation because I just had it in my mind that what they were going to give us was a half sphere. And when I saw this, I realized, oh, they're not doing that. But there is one major advantage to that. If they did give us a half sphere, it would be plate build, like something like the globe set that they gave us before. And you would have a lot of anti-studs facing inward to represent the back of the rooms of all of these areas in the Death Star, and it would feel very not clean. And it would be less fun to look at. And this feels extremely finished, extremely polished. All of the rooms feel like, when you're looking into it, it feels like very complete rooms with complete interiors that have really good design that would have been potentially lost if they had just given you the inside of a semi-dome, right? So I think that it was the right decision, and I think that you don't get a lot of play value out of putting together tons and tons and tons of sections of gray to build up a ball. I think it would have actually made it a less fun toy to have as well and to build. So I do jive with the whole presentation overall. So some of the elements that I would have changed. I've already mentioned I would have made this section removable, and that would have been really, really easy to do because it really isn't structural. I mean, it does help with the overall structure of this area to not have too much load on the sides and just kind of distribute it a little bit. But I'm convinced that you could figure out a way to make that removable, just so that you could have, if you wanted to, the functionality to be able to get this in and out through that back wall, and also just to have it feel more open if you wanted it to. The other thing is this back wall right here, I also mentioned should be moved back maybe 4 studs or so, and you definitely can do that because you have the space. The stand needed to extend out of the back anyway, just so that this thing doesn't tip over if you put it on a table or something. And the Palpatine's window back here also sticks out a fair amount, so there's definitely room to do it, and it would just help the space to feel a bit more cavernous. Like I mentioned before. The meditation chamber I would omit entirely, and I would actually take this cannon up here and I would have made a double Death Star laser cannon emplacement in here with a little mechanism where you can turn a gear or something and the cannons will both move side to side or something to that effect, so that you have another sort of more usable thing. This space feels kind of dead, honestly. You could put Vader in there and you can hide him away, but you want your Vader to be down here fighting Obi-Wan, or you want him to be up here gloating about the Death Star, or you want him to be in here choking people out in the meeting hall, or you want him to be up here fighting Luke. So you definitely don't need to place Vader in here, so I think this is a wasted area. I would have gotten rid of it entirely. The next thing I think is there's some areas that poke out a little bit, like the meditation chamber here, right? But I think that I would personally prefer, instead of this diving back into the design, I would have actually had it stand out further and be more of like an L shape that kind of, the way that this does, curves outwards and hints to the shape of the overall Death Star egg. Same goes for the prison block here. I feel like you could have had more walkable, usable area out here, that where you feel that the shape of the sphere is being hinted at more, and that would have kind of gone against the Death Slice criticism that people had. Now, of course, a drawback to that is that you have less light getting into the sections underneath and less access to certain areas. But I'm not talking about everywhere. I don't think that the entire decks should have come out and be round all the way up, just in certain spots. And then the next thing that I would suggest is that this all feels extremely clean in how it's tiled off mostly, and that's nice. It does give the floors a nice reflective quality, like what the Death Star has, very kind of clean, polished floors and everything. That feels appropriate. But I actually think that they did too much.
and I would have actually reduced the budget of the set, so reduce the overall price by ditching almost all of this tiling work and had it just be mainly studded floors, and then kept this a nice clean polished black the way that it is. Because this is actually a very efficient build because it's all built sideways with big panels and everything, so that's fine. And then losing a ton of the sort of pre-planned areas to place figures, so you can only place a figure here, here, or here. If you have just a fully studded surface, you can definitely have more freedom to place figures and also spend less money on tiles to go on the floor. So that's just something that I think I would have personally done differently. I already talked about how I would make this into a dark evil Sith room of some sort with evil Palpatine artifacts and things, because we know he was a collector of esoteric artifacts, and I would have moved that Death Star cannon down here, so we already talked about that. And as much as I like how well finished all of this is, I actually think that they're kind of missing a trick a little bit by not having certain areas be open and therefore feel like you fill them up with your imagination. So like this whole back wall right here and this backdrop, I actually enjoyed looking at the set more before I put those elements in, because you could feel the structure on either side, and then the empty space kind of begged your imagination to fill it with other things. Now, I'm not saying that's the correct way to go. It's just that I feel like the experience that I had building it kind of led me to be a little bit sad when I filled in all of those gaps, and that got me thinking of a way that they could have reduced the overall cost of this set. Because I guess my big takeaway is this set, I don't think should have been $1,000 set. I think that in the same way that the Falcon got upgraded from a $500 set to an $860 set. Initially it was $700, but they raised the price. Anyways, $500 to $800, let's say. I think that this original $500 Death Star should have been upgraded to around about an $850 set, and you could have easily omitted the parts required to make that happen. Things like the texture around the outside, it's nice. It's nice that that's there. I'm glad that they didn't just put nothing here, but if I had to sacrifice all of those bits of decoration all the way around, if I had to sacrifice a few of the more tiled off areas, if I even had to sacrifice an entire room and just have this be like another corridor section and have the price come down to $800 to $850, I think that would be worth it, and you could still have essentially the same scale of build. Another thing I would definitely do is I like how this cuts into the side profile of the Death Star here. It's cool how that's executed, but I would actually have moved this forward and I would have had it facing out at a 45-degree angle this way. That would achieve two things. It would keep this back section from hitting the characters because this would be angled in more, and then it would allow you to appreciate the actual dish part because it would be facing out away from the Death Star, and it also wouldn't highlight just how thin this entire section is by cutting half of it away and having half of a dome or a disc sticking out of it, or a dish, sorry. So I think that in and of itself would have solved quite a few of the problems for the marketing of this thing, because it would have showcased the Death Star laser better. I know that they were going for this view which is taken from, it's even in the marketing materials, it's on the box, that illustration of the Death Star of the inside, but of course this is way scaled down. In the actual Death Star, it comes right down into the center of it. But, either way, I get what they were going for, but I think having it angled out this way and even having the ability to rotate it to side slightly would have added a function and would have helped this to showcase itself in the best way possible. But as you can see, overall, I don't hate the thing. I had a strong emotional reaction to it, a visceral reaction to when I first saw it immediately, because I had just locked into my mind what I was convinced we were going to get out of it. And then the more that I looked at it, and especially once I built it, I realized that there's a lot of really great stuff actually going on here. There's just a few things that I personally, my own preference and my nitpicking nature, I would definitely change some things around, but I cannot really fault what they did here. And it does feel suitably grandiose as the first $1,000 set. I mean, the thing is massive. It's so heavy. It's really nerve-wracking to move because you feel like you grab it from underneath both sides and you just sort of like lean it up against your chest and you walk carefully from room to room. You maybe put your chin on the top there to hold it in place. And you definitely feel the heft of it when you're moving the thing around. So it does feel like, they didn't just slap $1,000 label on something arbitrarily. They gave us something truly huge and impressive for that price tag. So I guess that's good. But now onto something that's really, really bad and really quite serious for the future of LEGO unless they get a handle on it. Quality. This is the most expensive LEGO set ever, and it might be the lowest quality one that I've built in years, maybe ever. So take a look at these parts right here, right? These are meant to be able to have a bar connection that runs through this hole, and in fact, that's what you have to do in order to fulfill the instructions. You have to place a bar through 1, 2, 3 of these tiles with the jumper stud on the top. And you can see these little stress fractures right here. That's because I had to force these in here extremely hard to get it to work. And that's never happened to me before. The connection between a bar and a bar size hole is one of the things that LEGO always gets right and which competitor brands always get wrong. And whenever I build a competitor brand set, I always cringe when I get to a part where I have to insert a bar into a bar size hole, because it always happens where you have to force it in super hard. And LEGO now is to the point where I had to do that exact thing for an actual set. And you can see here, the fact that I had to do that means that the piece is actually sort of fractured internally in a way that now it sits crooked. So this sits on here crooked, this is crooked, and this one on the bottom here is crooked to the one above it. So this is bad. This is really bad. That's just one thing. Another thing was I was missing 2 parts in 2 separate bags. I was missing a 1x4 Technic axle in red, which was supposed to go in the elevator section right here, and I was missing a little jewel piece, a little 1x1 part that was meant to go in the underside of the Death Star here. I'm willing to say that I could potentially have simply lost this piece because it is small, and there was a spare included in the next bag, so I was able to get the spare and use it for that. But the axle, the 1x4 axle, is for sure not included in this set. And I know that because I also got an additional piece, a 1x8 plate in black, that was not meant to be included in the set. And so LEGO does their quality control via weight, or at least they used to. I don't know if they still do, but that to me explains why I was able to have a missing part make it through the quality check process, because there was a piece that wasn't supposed to be in there and then a piece that was missing. So they kind of balanced each other out. And again, it's really bad. You know, this is $1,000 that I've paid to get my hands on this plastic, and now I have to call customer service, wait for several weeks for it to get shipped out to me, and it will arrive. It will make it to me, but why should I have to do that as a consumer, buying the most expensive, most premium LEGO toy that's ever been produced? It's not good. The next thing that I've noticed that I'm trying to show you on camera now, see right here, you can make it out. There's this dimpling effect that's happening on a lot of the parts where, and you can see right here, there's a whole line of these mold marks where, or like parts where the internal structure of the brick is causing a sort of a dimple on the exterior of the brick, but it's happening all over the place. And there's a weird texture to the black parts where they feel extra satiny in a way that LEGO parts don't normally feel. And I noticed it specifically on the black, and it was and there's a ton of black parts in it, so it could be that it's an issue that's been happening and I just haven't noticed it until now because there's just so much black in this. But the actual surface quality of the bricks on the external surfaces felt bad for the first time ever. That's never happened to me in a LEGO set. And so that's another thing that I noticed that just felt off and weird and wrong. And there's more. These 2 plates right here, these don't have the usual level of clutch power that LEGO plates have, because when I first attached these 2 parts together using I believe it was a 2x2 plate in the middle that goes, inside of this build, there was not enough clutch power to actually hold these elements together, and they were falling apart, which should not happen. LEGO, the way that it's designed, the parts hold together no matter what they are, with very few exceptions. It's almost always been the case that you can place 2 parts together, and if there's a stud going into a stud, it should hold itself together very well. And these 2 parts wanted to pull each other apart because the clutch power wasn't correct. And I don't know if that's because LEGO's producing parts more quickly, or if they're producing them at too many different factories in too many different locations to keep consistent quality control. But again, to have errors with the actual, and this is a common part that I have many copies of in my collection that don't have this issue. I went and tested the exact same combination of parts, and I did not have this issue. Another issue that I've been having is all of the transparent elements are covered in scuffs and scratches, and I know that that's why sometimes Lego puts parts in a paper container to prevent that from happening. But then that extended to tons of other parts too. Like a lot of the black elements too were very scuffed and scratched right out of the box, and I don't think that that's right. I think that Lego should find a way to not have that happen. I don't think it's happening in the box in transit. I think it's happening at the factory before the parts get boxed, because normally Lego parts are perfectly fine to be in a bag together. It's not like they get jostled that much to where they start to destroy themselves in the packaging, right? It's something that's happening before they get bagged up, I believe. So overall, quality control on this is down, way down. And I forgot to mention also one of the flex tubes that I have here that connects the dish together had like a cut on it, like a nick, as if somebody had taken a knife and just like accidentally nicked the corner of it. Again, I have to assume that that happened at the factory because this went from the factory straight to my house. So I don't really know what could have occurred to cause that to happen, but there was these kind of little issues all over this set, and there were 9,000 pieces in this set, or over 9,000. So again, it could be just a case of, because there's so many things in the set in terms of actual pieces of plastic, that I'm just noticing these quality issues more because there's more of the set to look at, but it doesn't feel good. And again, I just have to call attention to this right here. I don't know if this is intentionally printed this way, but the overall sticker quality is really good on this. Like if you look at the detail of all of these things, they feel extremely crisp and well produced. And then all of these, which are identical, feel like they're printed weird. And so I have to assume that's just part of the design. But yeah, that could be a thing, but I don't think it's a thing. But overall, I was actually very impressed with the sticker quality in the set, so no major complaints there. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be telling customer service about this, and I think that if you have similar issues in your set, I would really highly recommend that you do as well, because Lego won't be made aware of these issues unless we tell them that we're having them. So if you experienced any of the same things that I pointed out, or other things that I pointed out, other missing parts or things that are not up to the usual quality standards of Lego, please let them know. Call the customer service line and tell them, even if you don't request them to send you out a new part or whatever, just to let them know that there's an issue, I think is very, very important. And it's going to help Lego in the long term to be better and to be continue to be the most profitable toy company in the world, and to not lose that high level of prestige that they have by letting quality slip below acceptable standards. So that's my little spiel on that. Overall, really, really disappointing to see that in an official Lego set, especially one that costs $1,000. The other thing I wanted to quickly touch on is the gift with purchase. I don't think that the gift with purchase should be something that you need to put into the set to make it feel complete. I don't actually think that necessarily is the case here, because to me the Death Star hangar feels complete without the TIE Fighter. It feels perfectly fine with the shuttle in it. But I'm noticing more and more that Lego are seemingly taking a piece out of the set and then selling it to you as a gift with purchase, and using that to get you to purchase the thing within the first week. That's another new thing that I'm noticing Lego doing that I really don't like. The pressure to buy something immediately within 7 days. It means that anybody who relies on sales and to be able to actually afford Lego sets, which are increasingly more expensive, is at a major disadvantage, because they'll never be able to get the full set that they paid for, because part of it was a gift with purchase given to those who spent the money early. And all of that is anti-consumer and really not good, and I really don't care for it, and I hope that Lego puts a stop to it soon. I know that they're probably getting a ton of negative feedback about that, and I hope that that's a practice that they do away with. To be clear, I'm not against gift with purchases that are useful to be added onto your set. I thought that the gift with purchase for the Endurance, for example, which was a rowboat that it was at a different scale to the ship itself, but was intended to be a side piece to go along with it, I thought that was perfectly fine. But things like the upcoming fish tank set that I've just been seeing, they literally took a piece out of it, the filter of the fish tank, and are giving it to you as a gift with purchase. Such a bizarre move. And the TIE Fighter here is, I think it's verging on that territory, although not as egregious. But it still leaves me with a kind of an icky feeling that I don't care for. And you cannot get that anymore. It's now, if you want that set, it's Bricklink or nothing, and you're going to be paying exorbitant prices for it. And I just think that's bad. That's bad for the hobby. This whole FOMO culture is really, really damaging and toxic, and it creates a lot of anxiety around a hobby that's supposed to be all about relaxation, creativity, and just joy. Yeah, not a fan of that. So the last thing that I want to touch on is, who do I think this set is for? Well, it definitely feels like a set that is for older collectors, or at least teenagers who are very experienced in building and have a lot of connection to the Star Wars brand, specifically the original trilogy, right? If you have a young Star Wars fan who's into the sequels and stuff, there's going to be nothing here for them to really latch onto. But I do think that for the target market of adult collectors and experienced Lego builders, they're going to have a lot of fun putting this thing together. They're going to have a piece that looks incredible on display, and it really does look really good on display. I'm not going to take anything away from Lego on that. I think the marketing images kind of did the set dirty a little bit, and I think that they didn't really put their best foot forward with this. And what you have here is a really nice diorama set, a really nice Death Star dollhouse, and it does what it tries to do very well, I think, overall. The second question to that then is, considering it's aimed at adults and not kids, is it worth the asking price? And I think it gets close. I still can't really fully recommend it at $1,000, but I think if you were one of those people who got the gift with purchase early and sold it, then you're looking at something like an $800 set. I think it is worth it at that price. And if you're able to ever get it on sale, which who knows if it'll ever go on sale, you're probably going to be happy with the thing that you actually get for the money that you spend. But if you spent $1,000 on it, I don't think you are going to necessarily be fully happy, because the amount of little compromises that were made along the way and little quality issues that are starting to creep in more and more, it doesn't feel like you're going to be super thrilled. It feels like you're going to have to make your peace with spending your $1,000, and that's not the best feeling, right? When you buy like a video game console and you play with it or you use it for the next 5 to 10 years, you really feel like you've got your money's worth. Or when you purchase a new phone and you have it for 5 or 6 years, I know some people get new phones every year, but if you actually do get the mileage out of it, it feels satisfying and it feels like the cost isn't as bad. But for something like this, where you're going to essentially build it once, you're going to spend about 3 to 4 days building it, and then it's going to kind of sit there on your shelf, I don't know that you're going to feel that you got your $1,000 worth of experience from this thing. But obviously that's going to vary from person to person, and it depends how much you love the Death Star as a location as well, I guess. But yeah, if this had been an $850 set, I think no question, hands down, it would have been a fantastic thing, and I would have recommended it wholeheartedly, no problem. So yeah, Lego just unfortunately letting the pricing really knock down another great product to something that is just an okay product when the price is taken into consideration.
All right, folks, so that's going to about do it for my thoughts on this massive set. Thank you so much for watching. If you did all the way through to now, I really, really appreciate it. This was a long one, huh? If you're wondering at what you're looking at right now, by the way, this is my special patron artwork for people who sign up to my Patreon at the relevant tier. And I do a little kind of a shout out, and then do some Star Wars fan art for each of my patrons. And this video's patron, we're going to be shouting out Rainy. And Rainy is the final patron to get the Star Wars character art for now. And then I'm going to start doing spaceships for everybody next week. So that's going to be really fun. So Rainy, thank you so much for the support over the months. And I'm really glad to be able to finally get you your character art here. This is the character of Nirai. And the reason why I went with that name is because it's sort of a play on Rainy. And also the reason why you're a Kaminoan is because rainy planet, you get it. So Nirai's backstory is that they were smuggled off of Tapoka City right before the destruction at the end of what we saw at the Bad Batch Season 3, where Tapoka City was completely destroyed. This character actually was a Force-sensitive Kaminoan child that was later, once the Empire was defeated and the galaxy freed, was able to take the training and actually become a Jedi fully fledged. So that's really awesome. Of course, the Kaminoans played a huge part in the destruction of the Jedi, and then this person getting to become one is kind of on the road to redemption for the Kaminoan people. So that's pretty cool, and I hope that you like it. So if you want to get your own patron artwork and other cool perks, there's so many different perks available at the different tiers. You can go on over to patreon.com/2bricks, see what you like, and you can support the work that I'm doing here, including being able to buy crazy overpriced giant Lego sets, building a giant 10-foot Venator, and many other things. You guys are all helping me to do that, so thank you. I'm going to get to work on the next video because I have many more on the way. I'll see you on the next one, and may the Force be with you.